You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today's episode 147. Don't turn off the water fountain with Amanda Berlin. If you're a business owner who wants actionable solutions to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. Before I introduce you to our guest here today, I want to remind you that I created a special masterclass for you for this time that we find ourselves in right now. It's called Pivot, Navigating the Uncharted Waters in Your Small Business. I highly recommend you go grab that right now. You can get it instantly and watch it on demand. Head on over to theproductivityspecialist.com/pivot. Listen, I want to make sure that you're able to access this and grab it anytime you need it because the feedback from me teaching it live was incredible. So if you join me for this masterclass and now on demand, you will discover how to strengthen your mindset because honestly, a positive mindset is going to be your most effective tool in staying in the game. I'm going to also show you how to reclaim control in your business and life by identifying what you can control versus what you can't. And then I'm going to talk to you about decision making, how to move through decisions quickly and effectively as a leader so that you can move alongside the market. Next, I'm sharing with you my 3-step approach to identifying, communicating, and holding boundaries with all the people in your life that you love, both personally and professionally. Even your little people that you might be finding on your lap right now. And lastly, we close out this masterclass with me talking about ways in which you can specifically invest your time in activities and projects and tasks that become assets in your business that will serve you into the future. So head on over and grab it at theproductivityspecialist.com/pivot, completely free. It is for you so that you can make it out the other side of this crisis that we find ourselves in much, much better. All right, so let me introduce you to our guest. You are in for such a treat because I am bringing my friend and powerhouse Amanda Berlin. After more than a decade in New York City public relations world, Amanda Berlin now uses her pitch powers for good. She helps entrepreneurs step into their presence, create a story that inspires others, and spreads their message in the media. Amanda has created a library of template guides and trainings and works one-on-one with clients to guide them to strategic storytelling and media relations based on her 12 years of experience guiding strategy for major brands in the corporate world. Amanda and her clients have been featured in all types of media, from Business Insider to Entrepreneur on Fire, and from WNYW Fox 5 to Bustle.com. She's the host of the Empowered Publicity podcast and loves arming soul-powered business owners with the ideas and skill sets they need to go from hidden industry gems to recognizable, trusted experts. Amanda has spoken on topics of visibility, publicity, and entrepreneurship on many, many stages. Okay, so before we get to the interview, I need to set this up for you. So whether you are new to Productivity Straight Talk or you've been around for a long time, I need to just tell you from my heart how important this conversation that I'm having with Amanda is, even in the times we find ourselves in right here, right now, as of the time of this episode going live. Because I have shared with you my model for finding your highest value activities as a small business owner. And for those of you that have not listened to that episode, I will link out to it in the show notes. The 4 buckets start with the very first bucket that if you invest your time in and runs overflowing, actually fills the rest of the buckets. And so the very first bucket is marketing and visibility. And as Amanda and I discussed in the interview, you may be tempted to actually cut your budget for marketing and visibility. And when I mean budget, I mean both your money and your time during this unprecedented time we find ourselves in our world right now. And we're going to share with you why that is the worst thing that you could be doing right now. I honestly feel that we can choose to retreat and curl up and play small right now because of what's going on, or we can choose to put a stake in the ground and fight for our businesses, serve our clients, show up and be of value, and share our message with the world. And so Amanda is going to be sharing with us strategies that you can specifically use at the end of this interview to take your message out to the world. Because right now, more than ever, I truly believe the world needs you and your message. And now, let's get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. Amanda, how are you doing today?
Amber, I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Good. And I love that you're answering so honest, because I think at best we're all doing okay as of the recording of this episode, right?
It's weird times.
It is. So we've had this interview scheduled for some time, and we chose to definitely move forward with the interview. And we're interviewing in probably around week 2 of most people being quarantined for COVID-19. And so while we will talk about that briefly, we still wanted to bring the amazing content we have planned to bring. And so we are going to be making sure that we're talking about how this is valid no matter what market we find ourselves in, what situation the world is in, that there are some tried and true things that we are going to share today that will help now and into the future.
I hope so.
Yeah, I know it will. Because
this info is evergreen, because we always need to be stepping into our leadership with a powerful message, and we need to be visible if we're going to grow our businesses come rain or shine.
Yeah. So, we've been friends for some time, and you had reached out and I had seen something you were doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how have you not already been on the podcast? And the answer is because I believe the time was now for you to be on the podcast, because I do think people need to hear your message now more than ever.
Thank you.
And so what we're talking about today is about PR and marketing. And for those of you that have listened to the podcast for some time, you know that the very first bucket to finding your high value activities is your marketing and visibility bucket. And it is that bucket of activities that I believe all business owners will find their high value activities in, that literally feeds the rest of the buckets. Like the rest of the buckets, i.e., sales conversations, servicing your clients, leadership through growing your team, don't exist if we're not showing up in our marketing and visibility bucket. I'll link to the episode that breaks out that framework for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, but just know that when we're looking at growing our businesses and finding our high value activities, what we're talking about today are those high value activities that will get a great return on our time.
Amber, when you told me about that framework that you teach, it was truly mind-blowing to me, because I've always known, I've been in PR since I graduated college, which is an embarrassingly long amount of time ago. And never heard it described that way. So whenever, and I mentioned to you earlier, whenever times are tough and budgets get slashed, even in the corporate world, we would see companies cutting their PR marketing and ad budgets. And we were always sort of like, don't you realize this is what you need in order to continue to grow even when times are challenging? And when you put it into the context of the high priority buckets, I was like, yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Totally makes sense. And I never heard it described that way.
Yeah. So the buckets, I have a visual with it, and it's like water, right? And so if your buckets have holes in it, or you're not putting water into the buckets, they don't get to overflow to the other buckets. And so for those that are thinking of like right now, you're going to retreat and like stop showing up and sharing your voice and do marketing and visibility activities, you're turning off the water fountain that ultimately leads to revenue, which is sales, right? Like if not enough people know about what you do and how you can help them, then the amount of people that you get to talk to and serve dwindle and dwindle and dwindle. So I believe that if you're making a choice either proactively, like I am choosing to cut off budget and time, so dollars and time to this, or you're doing it by default, you are turning off the faucet to your business. You're turning the water off, right? And that is not a good place to be. So Amanda, let's dive into a little bit more about you. So what do you do? How do you serve your clients? And what will you be sharing with us today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled. And I do think that this was perfect timing. As I mentioned, I started out in corporate PR and I was working for some of the biggest corporations in the world, helping them be louder than their competition. And over the first several years in my business, in that business, I learned a ton, and I put in my 10,000 hours of figuring out how to create stories that get my clients the attention that they would want. But it also rapidly revealed itself to have very little soul in that industry. So especially being in the big PR agency world where we were working with some of the most notable companies that are out there, including pharmaceutical companies and consumer products, and really helping the loudest guys be louder than their competition. And so over the years, I realized that I wanted to quote, like, go out and do my own thing, but I didn't know what that looked like until 2012 when I got laid off. And I saw that as my get out of jail free card. But I still wasn't totally clear on what I could do until I realized about a year later. So, anyone who feels like they're kind of fumfering around and not sure what they're doing in an early stage of their business, that is a total normal place to be. So
Yes.
it took a year to realize that the skill set that I had developed throughout my over 12 years in corporate was actually not something that everyone knew how to do, and that I could bring that skill set to people who were pursuing their passions, who were solo entrepreneurs. I work mostly with women, though I do have male clients as well, mostly in service-based businesses. I help them create the message and the stories that get them out there in front of wider audiences. I help them burst out of the word of mouth bubble to create more client relationships and grow their businesses in an authentic way that feels true to them, but also it feels true to them, resonates with their audience, and also contributes to the bottom line.
Okay, so that last part about, contributes to their audience, and that's where the soul came back into the soulless.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we are so lucky to have the skill set be transferred from big business and corporate to our small businesses. And I think there's something satisfying, and I know you, so I could assume it's like you can literally see those rippling effects so fast, right? Like you could see how these stories and showing up are impacting those that hear it, but also small business owners and their families and their communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's exactly what I say. Like, this is my positive ripple effect. So there's nothing that I love more than arming a solo entrepreneur with the tools that she needs to go out there and feel fully expressed in her own business, to the extent that she is out there with she's excited as she's describing what she's doing. And it just attracts more people into her fold. And inevitably, those are more of the right clients.
Okay, awesome. So let's dive into, what makes a powerful message? What are some of those things that you've taken from big corporate, big business and applied to small business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things to consider here. There's your messages, and then there's also the story ideas that you can create when you're venturing out to put yourself out there in a PR capacity. So what I want us to talk about first is the messages, because that's sort of the overarching position of your business. And the key things to consider as you're constructing your message is that you want it to be unique and you want it to be specific. So I'll give you an example of a client who I recently helped restructure her message. This is a client of mine named Kat Bradley, who is a marketing consultant. She has her own small agency that helps other businesses create marketing campaigns and initiatives. She's really good at a lot of different things. Marketing is such a vast industry. There's so many different things that you can do that her message was just way broad. It was so all encompassing that clients were hiring her to do things that she didn't even want to do anymore. And she was too knee deep in the work. She wanted to do more consulting. And so we pulled back and we realized that what she really loved to do in her business was actually help her clients who have established themselves to a degree and are ready to sort of up level in their marketing, help them. And this was the message that we came up with, form their first marketing department so that they could create marketing campaigns, but then also have the know-how and the wherewithal to bring in the right people to execute those campaigns, which also sort of implicitly communicates that she's not going to do the execution, that she's in the consultancy position.
Right.
So it clarified her positioning and it spoke her messaging in a way that personally I had never heard before. I never heard anyone describe a marketing consulting agency as coming in and helping you build your first marketing department. So in that, you can see how it's specific and it's unique. So it's specific in terms of what she is helping you do, and it's unique in the terms that it uses to describe what she's doing.
I think that's so important. And, I think it's fair to say when you were referencing that first year of business, so wherever you're at, you may feel like you're in that messy middle and you're I'm not quite sure, they pay me, I do it. People can be at different stages, right? But what you shared was that the power of pausing and first asking yourself, well, what do you want to do? What value do you want to bring? And then proactively creating a message around that instead of just what maybe quickly evolved from no business to being in business. That can always feel messy. So you paused her and had her reposition.
Exactly. And yeah. And there are ways for your soul to die in entrepreneurship as well. and your soul can die quickly if you're too steeped in doing work that you don't want to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. So I have a quick little story how this showed up for me in my business. It was my first messaging lesson. And I swear I didn't know it when it happened. I had to think back, learn about it when I reflected back on it. So when I first started my business 8 years ago, I believe I named myself organizational consultant. Not I believe, that's what it was. Organizing consultant or organizational consultant. And so I specialized in helping businesses get organized, which was great because that's what I was doing. But I didn't feel like I was nailing it. And I literally in one day decided, I don't want to be an organizing consultant. I want to be an efficiency consultant. I didn't change a single service. I just changed the name. And that was the beginning of my business blowing up. Because the shift was that organizing was seen as a luxury in a business and efficiency was seen as a necessity. My services didn't change. Now, this was a great lesson, but I wish I was that smart to have known. I didn't know that that's the shift that I needed. I swear I probably just in sheer frustration stumbled upon needing to change my title. But what I've taken away from that was the lesson of it could be just a shift in the messaging and the positioning that makes all the difference because nothing else had changed in my business.
Absolutely. That is fascinating. That is truly fascinating. And it really is so important to consider the words you use and the timing that you use during which you distribute those words. Because, we're talking now during a time that is so fraught and confusing, and timing really does, just to sort of bring that element in, timing really does matter in the way that you communicate and what you communicate during these times. So, so really considering the gravity of the language that you use and what people are really valuing in that moment, and you finding that efficiency was what people were really willing to place a dollar value on.
Right. Okay.
Very powerful.
Awesome. Yeah. So questions that are coming to mind for me is what was that process in helping your client? Was it a long time? Was it, doing coaching work? How do you go from that gray, very confusing messaging to such clarity?
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Yeah, I hate to overstate things, but that's my superpower. I can help my clients really figure out very quickly what's going to make them unique and specific in their messaging and in their offering. So I do find it so gratifying to sort of reach in and pluck them out of that frustration by being like, actually, given your entire history, your previous experience, the things that you want to be doing, this is where, we could step into a need here and where you can step into work that you actually want to be doing, as opposed to like you said, sort of being this like jack of all trades freelancer type of person who's going to take anything.
Yeah.
So my process with clients is really to kind of dig in with them and figure out like, really, tell me everything. Tell me, what you did before this. Tell me what that, kind of epiphany moment was like that changed everything for you. And the deeper that they're willing to go, the more we have to mine and the more powerful the message becomes. And you can do this by asking yourself those questions too. I give actually a simple structure for creating kind of like your brand narrative, your message that isn't sort of like your short, elevator message, but it's maybe a message that you can use as you describe to people, why you do what you do. And that is also a really important message to cultivate. And the structure that I use around that is a structure that will be very familiar to everyone because it's how we've consumed stories, since the beginning of time, like Shakespearean, 3-act narrative type of structure. And so if you do look at where you were before and then what that catalyzing moment was, and then how that changed everything for you and how it brought you to where you are today, you can also bring that into your messaging as well. And so I work with my clients on those kind of stories too, so that, they feel real comfortable. And a lot of times we will weave in that narrative with that sort of key message, and that'll become the way that they describe what they do to someone that they just met. So, different messages we end up creating different types of messages depending on what clients are comfortable communicating.
Okay. So I love that for so many reasons. And again, this isn't like a promotion fest, but I'm going to say the obvious. The obvious is that it is incredibly difficult for us to do this own work for ourselves. And the reason is because we just see it as like a normal day. Like, yeah, it was just normal. I had that conversation with that person and it made me have this idea. And then 10 years later, this is how I'm servicing my client. Like, you may have forgot about that moment. And we also downplay our own skill sets. Like the things that I teach, sometimes I'm like, that wouldn't be valuable. Like I could literally walk myself back. But the truth is that we are all so different. And so we take for granted the things we are so special at. And the power of working with someone like you, Amanda, is like you get to come in from a bird's eye view, pull all the strings in the bigger picture and show us what was literally right in front of us. And that's the power of coaching. That's the power of consulting, is like, you're not emotionally tied to those stories and like all of it. You're like, no, that's really good. That's going to resonate. And I just love that. So
yeah, thank you for saying that too. And it gives me so much joy to champion in my clients the brilliance that is just waiting there to emerge. And it's, I think we're at a time right now where, and even before all of this craziness is happening, we're in a moment where it's not acceptable anymore for brilliant people to be hiding their brilliance, because the world needs our contribution now more than ever. And we only need to rise up and start talking about what we're doing for that brilliance to emerge.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Okay, so we went a little bit in a lot of different ways, but what you were talking about was messages. I believe there was plural. So is there another message that we should be focusing on?
Yeah. So, I think that there's a couple of different things actually. So there's your message that needs to be specific and unique, that describes sort of the global perspective you bring to your work. There's your brand message, which is, maybe a little bit of a more narrative kind of story. And then there's also your story ideas that are kind of messages that you can relay in different shapes and forms over and over again, depending on what opportunities are coming your way. So you may have as few as 2 different story ideas that you can then pitch to the media. And so I would consider those sort of in the message category. And we can talk about what those 2 ideas are. And then the other thing that I was going to say is your talking points, the bullet points that come underneath those bigger ideas, those really can shift depending on what initiative you're pushing forward in your business. So your talking points can they will inform, maybe a tweak that you make to those larger story ideas, but the talking points then are kind of more malleable.
Oh my gosh, the visual on this is amazing. So it's like plug and play. So depending on what media outlet or what they're asking the spin to be, is you have these 2 assets, which are 2 story ideas. And then you get to adapt and move them to finesse for the needs of whomever you're pitching. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. And that's how I interpreted it. So this is really, really good. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to add too that so media is just one piece of the puzzle of visibility. There are also, I teach different pillars of visibility. And I just want to say that these story ideas or these like story messages that you can put out there can be used to create collaborations. They can be used to pitch yourself for speaking engagements. They can be used to host your own workshops. These are all types of visibility that I coach my clients to create, and media as well is one of them.
Okay, so I am going to hold my question for a little longer because I have a feeling. What are your 3 pillars for visibility? Like, it's almost like you can't tease us. Like, I want to know more. So what are all the ways? Like, let's get our big brains thinking like out of the box. We're not just one channel. Media is just the only PR. So what are all the other ways?
Absolutely. So I sort of love how this has evolved in my own business over the last couple of years, because when you do look at what a traditional PR firm does, they are not just pitching you for media opportunities. They're creating all different opportunities for you to relate to your public relations. So the 3 pillars that I've come up with have been developed after hundreds, as I'm sure your framework was developed, hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people who are in this work with me, who are doing this work. And what has emerged are these 3 pillars, and each is good for different things in your business. And as the pillars break down too, each of the tactics within each pillar is good for different things in your business. So in broad stroke, the 3 pillars are: number 1, collaborations and alliances. Number 2, speaking and events. So appearing on stages, whether someone else created them or you create them yourself. And 3 is media. So collaborations and alliances is the most intimate, the closest approximation to word of mouth that you can get. And that's really the goal with everything that I teach, is we're always seeking to approximate that feeling that someone heard about you from someone else that they trust. Because
I love that.
Yeah, that's the reason why you work with someone, is because like, it worked for that person, or that person's endorsing them, or, that person I trust told me about them. So I must be able to trust her as well.
Okay, pause for a second, because this just happened in my world. So my coach said, hey, there's this resource, and I'm just going to leave it really general. There's this resource. I think you should sign up for the membership. It'll be really valuable for what you're doing. So I go land on the page and I hopped off. I was like, no. And then I gave it some more thought, and I was like, well, I trust her, and she's already behind the scenes of the things she's telling me to buy. So I'm going to just trust that it is of value. Had I just seen an ad or a Facebook ad or on TV, I would have bounced because the first impression wasn't that polished. I took her word, and I'm behind the scenes, and it's so incredibly valuable. And so that right there is a great example of I could have come to the same place from 2 different ways, but because it was word of mouth, I entered in when I probably would not have.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
yep,
cool.
Exactly.
So we want to replicate that as close to that example as possible.
Exactly. So for my clients who come to me and they're like, look, I need to earn more revenue. I need more clients. We're going to start with that first pillar of collaborations and alliances, because that basically is word of mouth. You're tapping other people who are close to you to help you reach an audience that maybe is 1 degree away. So you're appearing, you're doing something that's mutually beneficial with a friend, a business friend of yours, or you're aligning with someone who's also talking to the same audience that you're talking to. And there's a lot of like bleed over in these types of things. So like you and I are friends. I would consider us collaborators. Yes. But this I would even consider collaboration, but it's also media.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, this is that example is I have an audience that I believe you can serve. To me, it's a great collaboration, but I'm also doing it because I already saw so much value. Like, why would I not want to bring you into my world? Right.
Right.
So, you didn't even pitch me. That's the thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another beautiful thing about really kind of like staying in the game and creating relationships and staying in touch with people is like, they want to support you. They want to support what you're doing. And you don't need to like twist their arm to give you that platform. So,
okay. So I will say that what worked was that your messaging was on point. So while it didn't come across as a pitch ever, like you didn't say, hey, can I be on your podcast? Your messaging, even as a peer, we're both business owners, but also as a friend, it was so clear on how you could serve my audience. So the messaging is what nailed this one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To keep it real in examples here.
Right. And it's because I worked hard on making it specific, I think, so that you know exactly what I teach. I'm not teaching this like big amorphous concept, though it is. I made it more specific so you could grasp it.
Right. Okay, awesome. So then there's some bleed over. And so now we're at number 2, I think. Yeah.
So collaborations and alliances, the first. Speaking and events is the second. So collaborations and alliances is what I would recommend to my clients who are very, very concerned about return on investment as quickly as possible. We're going to dive into where your relationships are already and how we can leverage those relationships to grow your bottom line. The second is speaking and events, a bit of a longer game, but also very close to word of mouth, because a lot of times just coming straight out of your mouth when you're on stage or when you're hosting your own event. But this is a very powerful way, not only to be seen as an expert because you're literally on a pedestal up there on stage, but also to connect with your people in person, which right now is challenging. So we need to approximate in person as well as word of mouth. But
this would be the part that gets tweaked during this recording is that, your stage, maybe you sit on your seat a little higher on a virtual call, because that's how we're doing this. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing virtual trainings and moving entire events virtually. So I don't actually see that going away. I think we're going to see a big change in live speaking and events to include a lot of virtual now that we've all tried it out for the short run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually had an event scheduled for a week ago, a massive event that we were planning for 6 months, and we had to reschedule it to several months into the future. And, it's still happening, and it will be wonderful to see everyone in person once it's safe to do so. But I did a masterclass in place of that event for the time being. And I needed to tweak what my messages were for that masterclass since we weren't going to be in person. But once it's safe again to be in person, speaking on stages and hosting your own event, creating your own stage and bringing people together really positions you at the center of something. And it shows your expert status. And you're right that the same thing can be approximated online. Whether it's, whether we're homebound or whether that's just the way that you decide to do it for convenience sake, or, it's a completely viable way to host an event is to create something virtually. And really, I'll just reiterate this, being at the center, positioning yourself yourself at the center of something. A couple of years ago, I think you were part of this. I hosted something that I called Agency in Your Inbox, where I invited all of these different experts to come in and give their best practices in their area of expertise. And even that, it was my version of a telesummit. Even that positioned me at the center of something, but also enabled me to connect with all of these other amazing business owners. And, the idea was to grow our audience and to be seen, but it made so many valuable connections too. Yeah. So there's always these ancillary benefits. And, when you're speaking to making connections with the other speakers, making connections with the conference hosts. These are all benefits that are sort of tangential to the initial benefit of or the central benefit of being on stage. So that's the second pillar.
I love it. So, and I do see the second pillar being live events. Like, people crave it. Yeah. There's just an energy that is not replicatable. I think that we're going to see a combination of the two, but I don't see it happening anytime soon, because we're only on the beginning of week 2, and the cry out on social media for physical interaction is crazy. So I don't see that going away. I know that people are going to want it, and they're going to be showing up to live events again to experience something that's not quite able to be experienced virtually.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And then
awesome.
The third pillar is media, which is the thing that people, I think, gravitate toward the most, because it's the most mysterious, I think. And it's also sometimes the most glorious.
Yes.
And I mean that literally, it's filled with glory when you get featured in the media, but it's most of the time the longest game when it comes to bringing in new clients.
And why is that? Can you explain that?
Yeah. So the relationship is somewhat more distant. So it depends on which media. So this media between you and I, a podcast, is the most intimate media. So this is actually probably the best route to get more clients, because it's almost like I'm speaking with you, speaking on a stage that you created, or collaborating with you, because your audience really does trust you. I know this. And again, it's oh, hey, Amber introduced me to this person. And Amber trusts her. So I could probably trust her too. That's the nature of a podcast audience. So podcasts are a bit of an anomaly in the media landscape, because we as podcasters have created such a profound relationship with our audiences. Our audiences know that we are going to take care of them.
Right.
When it comes to other media, it's really good for either validating your expertise. So meaning someone finds you a certain way and they go back to your website and they see, oh, she's been featured on the ABC affiliate here in Las Vegas. That's pretty impressive. I could trust that. They may not have seen you there, but they trust the fact that you've been in media.
Right.
So that's a validator or a credibility booster. And then the other benefit is when we look at more mass market media, a network affiliate in your local market, or a magazine that's on the rack in the grocery store, those get wide visibility. So the audience that you're tapping with that is very broad. So you actually might not be digging deep into your ideal client market there. However, odds are your ideal client is reading that. Maybe some of them are. And they may be oh, okay. It just kind of puts a little bug in their ear. But you need to then cultivate their understanding of what you can do for them on a deeper level, especially if you're a business that offers higher ticket items, higher ticket services. If you're launching a book, or if you're selling something that's lower price, a low price product, then yes, those mass market media could be a good opportunity for you, because the trust factor doesn't have to be that high.
Right.
For someone to invest with you.
Yeah. And so then it's a long-term, the road, I guess, the game, the long road is that it's further from them being closest to the dollar with you. Like they're hearing you, they're trusting you, maybe they see your name again, and then you get them into your world, then you nurture them. And then by the time it's just further down the road. It's not that it's not valuable, but you have to be in it for the long-term game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when I look at my own business, and my client base, the people who have signed with me the most quickly are the ones who have been in my world most intimately. And I don't mean that in any way other than in business.
Yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Amanda.
Yeah, right. But people who I've met in person, people who have been introduced to me by other people that they trust, and the people who met me through media have, yes, signed up for my email list, downloaded my freebies, sent me emails saying that my work was meaningful to them. And then over time, they come in as clients.
Right, exactly. Okay, awesome. So those are 3 great pillars. And would you recommend that they are working on one pillar solely and then getting traction? Or would you say finding something in each of them and diversifying? Like what is your go-to strategy there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at all my clients' goals at the very onset. And so we define what their goals are because that's what's going to drive the strategy. I think that's true across the board. So if the goal is that they want to earn more money, then we may start with collaborations and alliances and see how we can bring in money as soon as possible through getting the word out with their refined message about their services, about what they can do so that clients then come in. And sometimes it's as simple as putting an email out with your new message or new and improved enthusiastic message to the people who even already know you, like your existing email list. Because how many times have you been, I know I always use this example of my aunt who I love, but I see her on the holidays, she's like, I have no idea what you're doing, but you look great on Facebook.
That's awesome.
Like, you should know what I'm doing. Everyone should know. It should be that clear what I am doing so that anyone can refer me to someone else that might need me. And now I think my aunt who lives like in a retirement community in Florida doesn't necessarily have many people to refer me to, but your message should be that crisp and that straightforward that people get what you're up to. And so everyone around you needs to be reintroduced to what you're doing on a regular basis. So I would say that collaborations are a great place to start. And then we do start moving these other things forward as soon as we can, because it also, as much as media is a long game to results, it's also a long game to start to find momentum with that. So you need to start that at the beginning if we're going to, there's no reason to hold off. Once we know what you're talking about and we have your story ideas, you can absolutely be pitching to different types of media depending on what your goals are.
I always love a good framework. And the way that you shared this is so clear to me that there's, these 3 pillars that we get to work on each of them at different times. They yield different results, but it's almost like you're advising us to have this diversification of visibility and marketing to make sure that we are strong and steady and that leads are coming in quick and leads are coming in the long term and they're coming in from different places. And so for that, I love this 3-pillar approach. It's so clear to me. So thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for validating my framework too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like clear as day for me. And to be honest, this is the first time I'm hearing it in this detail. So this has really been helpful for me, as well as when I think about, it's not just putting on our to-do list, like visibility or pitch, we need to be like, well, what are we pitching? Why are we pitching there? What does that look like for the overall strategy? And for goodness sakes, ask what your goals are to start with, which is always a good thing. So I love that you're tying it back to the goals. The question that has been burning in me in the last 30 minutes is, what are the 2 story types that you're telling us we need to have story ideas for? I'm literally I couldn't be the only one wanting to hear. What are the two?
I'm so glad you came back to that. Yes, thank you for bringing us back to that. So the 2 story ideas to start thinking about are your how-to ideas and your story, your personal professional story, your journey pitch. So your how-to, let me start with the journey pitch actually. So your journey could be structured the way that I described earlier. Could be a version of that brand story message that we would come up with that sort of brings together the important details of your before, your epiphany, and your after. The thing with that in the context of a pitch is the elements of it that need to be added are what the audience can take away from this story. So you can take that story and like put it up there on your about page, and it could live there as your about page, a version of your about page or part of your about page. But when you decide to use that as your story pitch, your journey pitch, you need to include 3 to 5 bullet points as to what the audience will take away when they hear you tell this story. So what can you teach them? And that's a little hybrid sort of take, or it's something that we're taking from this how-to concept, which I'll also get into. But most of the media that we'll ever contribute to is service-oriented. It's service-based media. So they are providing some takeaway to their audience, something that they're going to learn. So it's really important that you're not just giving a decision maker, a journalist, a podcaster, a reporter, like, here's all this stuff about me that you
because who cares?
Right. You have to put it into context for them as to how their audience will learn from it and what they'll be able to take away from it. So that's the first idea.
I love that. Okay, before you go to 2, I just want to recap. Because what I'm hearing is like, I just said like, who cares when you make it all about you? But we do, like, we love stories.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of like you're wrapping the lessons in like, people are intrigued about other people's stories. But at the end of the day, there needs to be something that came of hearing that story.
Exactly.
Right? Okay,
exactly.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So not that they don't care. That's not what I meant. I just meant that when they're of service of mind and they don't know who you are yet, it's not going to be of value just to hear your story alone.
Exactly. And, it is a valid point to say who cares, because when you think about, and this as a podcaster, I know this as a PR person and as a podcaster, when you think about the journalists out there and the decision makers who are fielding thousands of pitches a day and hundreds of interview requests, when they get a pitch that says, here's all about me, you want to have me on? They're going to be like, profanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not doing it right. So the point is that you want to make it as easy for them as possible to see how you can fit into the context of the media that they're producing. So that means showing them very clearly, this is what your audience will get when you have me on air, or when you interview me, or when you write about me.
I love that. Okay, awesome. Okay, so what about the how-to story?
Okay, the how-to is, you may have a couple versions of your story depending on what, there may be different audiences that you can speak to, and you might tweak your story accordingly. You can have many how-to pitches because there are many different things you teach in your business, and there are many different audiences that you might be able to teach those things to. So your how-to has to be a very specific idea, specific, nuanced, timely, relevant to the outlet that you're pitching it to, but it's primarily to teach them how to do something. So my how-to might be, how to write a compelling pitch for television. It's specific, and I can go into detail about the do's and don'ts and, however I might structure that. But it's one specific thing that you can teach to an audience. So you might be able to actually take one of the bullet points from your story, your journey pitch, and as to like what you might teach to that audience, and make a whole how-to pitch out of that one bullet point.
Oh, I love that idea. And so then how many how-tos do you think someone that's getting started should have in their toolbox? Like, I'm assuming that can get overwhelming when we have so much to share.
Absolutely. So I am not a big proponent of doing a bunch of like busy work to lead up to taking action. So what I would propose is that find 3 media outlets. And what I mean by outlets, I don't know if that's a jargony word or not, but it's like a destination for your pitch. You know, it could be a podcast. It could be an online magazine. It could be a newspaper, could be a particular section of a newspaper, even more specifically. Find 3 that you feel would be meaningful and just ask yourself, what could I teach to this audience? Imagine who's reading, imagine who's listening. Pay attention to the content that the media outlet is already producing and ask yourself, what can I teach to this audience? And just answer that question and write a pitch on that. And I know that that's easier said than done sometimes, but I don't prescribe, making a whole list of all these different things that you could teach and writing out all these pitches. Just find a couple of initial places to start thinking about where you might be able to insert your teachings and go from there.
Okay, that's great. Just start small and then get the momentum. Get some feedback, tweak, and then do it again.
Exactly.
All right, Amanda. So I am dying to ask you, what do you think is the number one challenge of people not showing up and investing in the marketing and visibility bucket? Like, what gets people most stuck with these types of activities?
Most people don't know where to start, or they've been doing what they think they should be doing, and they're convinced, like, this is not working for me. I keep getting rejected. Mm-hmm. I would say that, it is an overwhelming prospect because it is a huge bucket. It is an absolutely huge bucket. But with the framework that I've described, I think that it gives you a very defined starting point. Yeah. And when you look at someone like me who can show you from the outside, like, this is where you should start and this is what you should say, someone to validate, like, you're doing it right, it makes it so much easier to hit send on those emails that feel really high stakes.
Right. And not to mention the accountability with it. Once you have decided, like, this is something you're going to focus on and you've asked for help, it's like, I would bet that Amanda, like I do with my clients, is like, so how'd that go? Did it get out? Like, did you hit send? If you didn't hit send, let's hit send together.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Amanda, so you did mention that you are a podcaster. So share with us where we can find you, about your podcast. And then I believe you have a special offer for our listeners here today.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So you can find me at amandaberlin.com. You can learn more about my podcast, which is called Empowered Publicity, by searching for me on any listening platform that you subscribe to. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear anything that you might want me to cover on the podcast as well. I love ideas in that regard. I read every email that comes to my inbox from my website. So if you go there and fill out the form, that's an easy way to get in touch with me. And if you are intrigued by how you could transform your message during this kind of weird time or whenever, in order to step more fully into leadership, step more confidently into communicating your big mission and vision and how you can help the right people, I am offering a free 30-minute rogue message assessment. So I want you to step into your inner rogue and learn how to communicate in this bold, rule-breaking fashion. And really, even if you don't identify as a rogue, I will help you communicate your message in a way that just feels really right to you. That's always my goal, is I want to focus on language that feels right to you so that you can go out there and confidently communicate. So that is available at amandaberlin.com/assessment. You can get on my calendar, again, for free 30-minute message assessment where we will literally dive in and rewrite your message.
Okay. And so I am going to highly recommend that if you had it on your to-do list, or when you hear me talk about, well, what is showing up on your calendar as visibility and marketing activities, and are you consistently investing in those activities? If that answer is not yes, then take this next first step. Get clarity about your message, or how you can move into your messaging, whether that's here and now in this marketplace, as Amanda said, but to be honest, this is what Amanda and I talked about before we hit record, is everything we're sharing here today is not only valuable no matter what you find yourself in current situation, but it was valuable last week and last month, and it'll be valuable next year and the year after. Like, people need to hear from you and how you can help them. That's not changing. And I can only encourage you and tell you what I have chosen to do, and it's put a stake in the ground. I am fighting for my business. I am going to not retreat, and I am not going to get quiet. And I encourage each of you not to do that right here and right now. So right now, double down on your messaging and your visibility. That's a great activity to do right now when we are not all finding ourselves as busy with clients. Work on building the relationships now. That's my advice to close out. Sorry, Amanda, that's my soapbox I had to close out on, is like, this is so
really
needed.
Moved by that. I'm really moved by that. Thank you for saying that. And I'm with you. I also am putting my stake in the ground. I'm fighting for my business. I'm taking a stand for all of us who have something important to say, because the only way that the people who need us are going to find us is if we have the courage to raise our voices now and always.
Now and always. Amanda, thank you so much. So don't hesitate. I'm always telling you, like, take action. And if your next action step is to schedule an appointment, make sure you do that as soon as we're done here today. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. And as I knew you would be, providing such great value for my audience, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Amber, thank you. And thank you for being out there doing the work that you're doing. It's so valuable. And I am so grateful for you.
Awesome. Great. Have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. Make sure you go over and connect with Amanda and go listen to what she has to say over on her Empowered Publicity podcast. All right, so I had referenced in the interview and in the intro my framework for finding your highest value activities as a small business owner. If you are interested, you can go to theproductivityspecialist.com/121. That will take you to the episode Productivity plus Profitability, Why Your Business Needs Both. And it's there that I outline that framework for you. So that's episode 121. All right, guys, this is the time. This is the time to find your voice. It's the time to amplify your voice. It's the time to show up and share your gifts with the world. So I hope you took some really actionable steps out of today's episode. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on today's episode, what is your next right step? How can you step into committing to being consistent with your marketing and visibility? Do you need to get it on your calendar? Do you need to sit and clarify specifically what types of marketing and visibility you want to work on right here, right now? Do you need help with your messaging? Make sure you reach out to Amanda if you need some assistance moving through and showing up consistently in your marketing and visibility. All right. And just as a reminder, in case you didn't hit pause, if you have not already grabbed my free masterclass, Pivot, Navigating Uncharted Waters in Your Small Business, head on over to theproductivityspecialist.com/pivot. So that's my straight talk for you today. Until next time, have a productive week.